Hello there, mathematicians. It's Ms. Whipple, and today I have a fun and slightly challenging lesson to extend your knowledge of measurement. Now, you've been measuring with inches and feet and yards, and now I want to kind of move into something a little trickier that involves our knowledge of multiplication and arrays and also measurement. There's a really fun project that I have for you to go along with this lesson that you can try out, but first you need to learn how to calculate area. So area is the measurement of how much space is being taken up. We can use area to find how big a field is, how big a room in your house is, or how big a little shape on a piece of paper is. There's lots of different ways that we use the measurement of area, but it's a really important one, especially in your real life. So I'm going to show you this on grid paper or graph paper. That's this background that I've got going on here. And I'm going to start by just drawing a rectangle. Okay. Now think to yourself, think about arrays. Think how many rows are in this rectangle. Well, there's one row. Oops. Here's another row. There's another row. Here's another row. Here's another row. So that's 5 rows. I'm going to put that off to the side here. And now think to ourselves, well, how many columns are in this rectangle? Well, here's one. Here's one. Here's one. And here's one. There's 4 columns. In each row, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. In each column, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. Notice the number of squares in each row matches the number of columns. The number of squares in each column matches the number of rows. We can remember that from arrays. Now, our next job is to try to figure out, well, how many squares make up this rectangle? Well, we can skip count using our rows or our columns. We might skip count by 4s or just add 4 a few times. We know we have 5 rows, each with 4. So we're going to have to add 4 a total of 5 times. And that equals, quick do the math in your head, 4 plus 4 is 8. Plus another 8 is 16, plus 4 is 20. 20 total squares. Or we could skip count or add by our columns. We know that there's 5 squares in each column and there's 4 columns. So we might say, okay, let's add 5 4 times. And that equals, guess what? Also 5, 10, 15, 20 total squares. So no matter how we count these up, we're going to get a total of 20 squares. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I remember how to do this. Where does the multiplication part come in? Well, how many times did we add 4 to make 20, or to count up the squares in this rectangle? We added 4 5 times. So if we think to ourselves, well, 5 times 4, that equals 20. If we add 4 5 times, that equals 20. How many times did we have to add 5 up to make 20? Well, 4. We added 5 4 times to make 20. Now, here's the key. The area, the amount of space taken up by this rectangle, is 20 squares. In this case, our unit is squares, and so it's taking up 20. And so we found the area by multiplying length, is how tall it is over here, by width, which is how wide it is. We said, okay, well, it's 5 squares tall or long and 4 squares wide, so we could do 5 times 4. Area can also be found by doing width times length. So we might have said, okay, well, it's 4 squares wide by 5 squares tall, so 4 times 5 equals 20. This is the calculation for area. Now, we're just using squares right now, but let's imagine this in real life. Let's imagine that you are an architect and you are planning out a building. Well, you need to know how big your building is going to be. So when architects are planning out the footprint of their building, that's kind of like how much space their building is going to take up on the ground and what it's going to look like. They use scale models like this. They might say, okay, well, I want to draw a miniature, I want to draw a blueprint of my model here. So they might say, okay, well, one of these little squares, each side of this square is going to be 1 foot long. So one of these little squares is going to be called 1 square foot, because each side is 1 foot, and 1 foot by 1 foot equals just 1 square foot. Each side is a square, so the space inside is a square foot. Now let's go back to our example up here. If this building is, and this is going to be very small, maybe it's a shed. If this little building is 4 feet wide and 5 feet long, we would say, okay, well, 4 feet by 5 feet is 20 square feet. So in this situation, this building would be 4 feet by 5 feet, and that is a total of 20 square feet. A square foot is how much space is taken up. A foot, which is how we measure the sides, is just the length of something, or how long it is from end to end. So there's a difference between a foot and a square foot. A square foot is space being covered, and a foot is just the length. I'm also going to link you guys to a Khan Academy video about this very same concept. So if you're still feeling confused about how to calculate area, you can check that out. Otherwise, there's a really cool project about designing your dream home and finding the area of it. And you can find that here on Schoology as well. Good luck, have fun, and stop into your teacher's office hours if you're having questions about this. Bye, second graders.